Welcome back to the Next Chapter podcast. I am very excited to introduce you to my dear friend, Rhee. Rhee and I have known each other for almost half our lives. She was my college roommate, had the pleasure of living with me when we weren't really sure what we were doing because, it was before we were married, before we had kids, before we were mothers, and any of that was even something that we were thinking about. So welcome, Rhee, to the Next Chapter community.
Thank you, Andrea.
You're welcome. And I promised, Rhee, that we wouldn't get into any of our, college stories or embarrass each other with anything like that. So we will start at the very beginning of Rhee. And what did you dream of becoming when you were a little girl?
Well, my dad's a dermatologist, and I really always looked to him, and I was like, wow, I want to be a dermatologist like him. Now, in today's light, obviously, I really should have become a dermatologist. But as a kid, I always saw my dad going to work and being able to help people. And when somebody had an itch or a rash, they would come to him and be able to see an appreciable improvement. And so he went into the field of dermatology when he was, when it wasn't really popular, but I admired that in my father and his work ethic. And I kind of always wanted to be a dermatologist. And then life hit reality.
and then life hit and reality. So can you kind of walk us through some of the pivotal moments in your life, I guess kind of college, post-college?
Sure. So I went to University of Michigan, go Blue.
Go Blue.
And I went with Andrea. We became friends freshman year. And college was great. It was a lot of figuring out what, as a grown-up, I'm supposed to do, although I was definitely not a grown-up.
No, we weren't, but that's okay.
And I went in with the idea that I was going to be pre-med and quickly realized that I was not going to be pre-med. It was just a little too much for my my lifestyle and my enjoyment and where I was. And I just was not up for that kind of academic rigor at the time. And so I was not pre-med. And that kind of led to graduating and being, what do I do with my life? And, like now I'm on my own. And I took a job in marketing and the dot-com world in the early 99, 2000. And I did that online marketing for a couple years. And I had an epiphany that I did not like marketing. I always enjoyed helping people. It was kind of in my nature. My parents always said I was an old soul and like talked to the grown-ups at the table as compared to, people my age. Right. And I just started to think about what I wanted in life. And I was just, in my early 20s, but not happy in a job. And I remember going to, I think we went on spring break. We met my sister who was studying abroad for spring break. We went to Italy. And on that plane ride, I was like, I don't like what I'm doing. And my parents and I sat down and we were talking for a while on the flight about what I could do and aligning with what my interests were, and looked at psychology because I like talking to people and helping people. And, one of my parents' very good friends at the time was an ear, nose, and throat doctor. And he was like, oh, you should become an audiologist and let me show you what that's all about. And when I came back from the vacation, I was able to shadow in his office and see what the field of audiology was about. And I really fell in love with it. And so from that point on, I quit my job because why not? You're in your 20s and no responsibilities really.
Exactly.
And went back to graduate school. I took the prerequisites for audiology when I was living in New York City. And I did work. So I actually got a job that year when I was taking my prerequisites at a private school in the city for kids with learning disabilities, specifically like ADHD and dyslexia.
Mhm.
And that was kind of a really interesting time because I was in school learning, but also seeing firsthand some of the things that, help being a helper and getting back into that profession of back to what I really enjoyed, which was working with people and changing people's lives.
Mhm.
And I went to grad school, and was able to graduate, I think it was 2004, with my master's, and started practicing audiology. And it was great. And I really haven't looked back since. I mean, my profession has obviously changed, and I went back and got my doctorate. So that was a big change. I met my husband. I don't even remember what your question was anymore.
No, it was just more so kind of highlighting some of the pivotal moments. And I appreciate you sharing how you got to the audiology profession, but also that you recognized at a certain point that you weren't happy with what you were doing, that it made sense at the time. You had just graduated and it was .com and it was something new, but that you took that leap when you weren't feeling comfortable with what you were doing and looked at other things. And I think that it's important to point out because there are people that feel stuck at times and don't take that deep inner look and say, well, what is going to make me happy, and kind of realigning with some of their core values. So it sounds like that was the conversation that you had with your parents. Okay, what is going to light me up? What is going to make me happy? What do I like to do? What am I good at? And so I think that that is really admirable.
Yeah,
And
thank
the
you.
fact that you were able to go back to school, that takes a lot. And yes, while you were a little bit younger and you said that you didn't have responsibilities, I think at any age people can go back to school and should follow their passions. And when you're not happy, that there are ways to, kind of reconnect with what you had always dreamed of doing.
Absolutely. I think for me professionally, I wanted a job that was really fulfilling, that I would love going to work, and I happened to make a salary doing it. And that's really what I was very fortunate to find in the profession of audiology. And I've since started my own practice, which we can get into a little bit more, but it's really, I think it's a wonderful job. It's not a job. It's a career,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
being able to help people change their lives through better hearing, and it's a real tangible improvement. It kind of goes back to what my dad um, liked about his profession, which is that tangible. You can actually see it change. And for me, when people come in and they're struggling with their hearing and their whole family's frustrated that they can't hear, and we treat their hearing loss properly, all of those issues go away, and they literally, like, in a matter of moments, go from saying what to like, what are you talking about? Like, oh, I can hear you fine. And everyone's like in the room is like, what just happened? So so it's a very rewarding profession, and to be able to help people reconnect with their family and friends through better hearing. So I love it, and it's been a great journey for me.
Well, that's huge because you are so special to your family and friends, and I know that they're important to you too. And staying connected and then being able to do that for others is huge. So I know for a little bit that you were practicing in different offices, and then you went to your own beautiful practice, which I have had the privilege of being under Dr. Rhee's care. We won't get into all the details about that, but she does a really good job if you need to have your ears
Checked.
irrigated and checked and make sure that your hearing is correct. She has beautiful state-of-the-art office. But kind of what led you into going out on your own? Because that is a big step, which I am tremendously proud that you have done that.
Thank you. So I would say it's kind of a funny story, but making lemonade out of lemons, right?
Yeah.
So everyone knows March of 2020 was a pivotal year for, I would say, the entire world.
Yeah.
And and March 13th happened to be my last day at a practice that I was really unhappy being at. It just didn't kind of check the boxes that I saw as my career unfolded and yeah. And so I took the opportunity during lockdown to really reflect on what made me happy, which is helping people struggling with their hearing. But also, I knew that in the future, I wanted to be a business owner and start my own practice and chart my own course for doing things better. Mm-hmm. And I always knew I could do it better. So I took lockdown and decided this is the time. And I started a practice during that time. And in May of 2020, so a few months later, I opened Hearing Doctors of New Jersey. And yeah, and I haven't looked back since. So now I have my own business. I am a business owner and a doctor of audiology. And I get to choose the best care possible and don't make any compromises in that. And it's been really fascinating and exciting and stressful to grow a business during a pandemic when businesses are shutting down. And I'm the one who's like, yeah, I'm going to start a company. But I knew that
says
in
a
my
lot about you and your strength and your dedication to wanting to do that.
Thank you. And I just knew I could do it better. And there was a better way to care for people, and people want that care. And yeah, and so it's really been a journey for we just celebrated 3 years. Yay. So it's been 3 years since March of 2020 or May of 2020. Crazy. And yeah, and it's been a journey, and we've had a lot of people come in, and we've been able to help hundreds and hundreds of people struggling with their hearing loss and other things. So yeah,
that's important. And I want to again highlight how you took lockdown, and you said you reconnected with what was important to you, and that you wanted to be a business owner, and you reconnected again with your values. And so that's really important to highlight. So how you mentioned that you met your husband, but we haven't spoken about how you are a mother to 2 beautiful children.
Thank you.
And so being a mother and now a business owner, can you kind of talk about how you create that delicate balance for yourself?
I don't know if I've ever created the delicate balance.
Which I appreciate the honesty, because it is always, a struggle.
Yeah, there's definitely
determine what to do.
Yeah, I would say I do the best as being a mom for my children. And I think that them seeing a mom as a business owner and have 2 working parents is a good role model. And they understand that mom's on a work call, and they understand that dad's on a work call too sometimes. And that I have to travel for work sometimes, but I've tried to build a business and a culture where I can, because I have a schedule, I can carve out time when I need to be there for my kids, and not miss important things. Because I think I realized pretty early on when I had children that you don't get those times back. So missing something in class that's important to your child, I did that once and I would never do it again. And I was like, you know what? You don't get that back. So like that little concert that's important to them, it's only going to happen once. So you have to show up for those things. And I think having a business that I can control my schedule is important, because, there are school responsibilities and children responsibilities, and they're getting a little older. So there's less of those like concerts, but but it is important that you show up for those too. And I think that just even if your mind is in some other place, they don't need to know that, but showing up is important and finding that balance, and then going back to work if needed.
Right. And understanding that you make the time. And I like how you said that you can't get that back. I mean, the hours, obviously, we all have the same 24 hours, and we need to be intentional with that. And as working mothers and working parents, being those role models, but also showing them that we have some boundaries that we can put into place, and that we want to be able to be there for the family, but we also
Mm-hmm.
want to be there for ourselves and the things that are important to us. And that is such an important lesson to teach our kids. And they're definitely seeing that with you.
Yes.
So, and I also wanted to then ask kind of about Rhee time. What do you like to do for yourself, or kind of to prioritize self-care? I know we've had, conversations about this and we laugh about it together. So when I bring that up, kind of what comes up?
Self-care is not something that I really focus on. I know it's buzzy and popular to talk about self-care, but I don't.
Well, how
I
do you
go to
define
the
it? How do you define it? Because it's different for other people. I know that it's like buzzy and all of that, but each person could define it in a different way.
Sure.
So,
I mean, I've talked to people about this, and it's the time that you give to yourself to
right.
kind of be and explore your interests or your hobbies. I think for me, I'm kind of an all-in person, and I my business is my hobby, I guess, in large part, because it requires a lot of focus and attention, and it'll wake me up in the middle of the night thinking about something. Um, I go to the gym a couple times a week I work out with a trainer. So I guess that would be self-care, and that's
100%.
important time for myself. I just wasn't that person that, gets my nails done weekly. And that's just not how I operate, or I find like I'm sitting in the chair wanting to be done.
Right.
So
Well, then it's
that's
not
not good
relaxing
self-care.
for you. No, it's not at all. So that's important to point out, though, that everyone's self-care definition is different. And the fact, I wanted to point out too, self-care even could be the book that you wrote for your patients about audiology and all of that, and being able to give back and continue to advance your profession and your business. So that could
Yes.
be considered self-care too.
I wouldn't say that's self-care for me, though. It's definitely self-care for my patients. I wrote a book on how to stop struggling with hearing loss. And it's something that there's a lot of misinformation out there. So it synthesizes a lot of the research and best practices and how we treat hearing loss in our practice. But as far as self-care for me, I kind of joke that I like to get a good night's sleep. So self-care for me means getting into bed not too late, and usually before my children, and just relaxing and trying to unwind and not be on my phone too much, and chill out. That's
important
self-care.
though. Good self-hygiene is so important. I mean, I wrote a whole article about go the F to sleep, and it was a whole joke on, for so many years I used to like mumble under my breath to the kids, like as they were little and as they got older and older and older. But really it was a reminder to myself that I need to get to sleep, because when you don't get the proper rest and the brain rest, and you're giving and doing, that you get burnt out. So that is 100% self-care.
Yeah.
And one of these days we will definitely get in, some tennis lessons and,
Yes.
and all of that. But it becomes a delicate balance of how do you want to prioritize your time. You can try to do it all, but at what cost? So right now it's, building your business, getting enough sleep, being there to show up for your family, your children, for your friends. And that's a lot.
Mm-hmm. It definitely is. My mom
Yeah.
always joked that I was a good sleeper, and I love sleeping. So, it makes sense. That's my self-care, I think, in a big check mark, like done. 10 hours is awesome.
Yeah, that's definitely very important. And so, as far as support system, because in order to be able to run a business as a mother or a wife and all of that, how did you build some kind of support system?
Oh, I have an amazing husband, and my family is really supportive. Um, Scott never questioned my crazy ideas that I have, like starting a business in the middle of a pandemic. Why would you do that? Yeah, so he believes in me. He fully supports me, and you know, is able to cover for the kids when I can't or something comes up. So we really have a really wonderful relationship that is fully supportive of each other. And he's just all in on this and knows that I can do it. So even when sometimes I scratch my head, I'm like, oh God, what did I do? But, I just keep pushing forward and doing what needs to get done, and works. Knock on wood.
Definitely. And that's nice though, to have that supportive system, because it can be a real struggle when people don't have that support system, or even maybe they do and don't ask for the support when it's needed. Mm-hmm. Some people are, not you, but other people are afraid to say that they need some help, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, you can't do it alone.
No, definitely. It takes a village, right?
1,000%.
And when I say the word fulfilled, kind of what does that mean to you, both personally and maybe professionally?
I feel like I'm in a really good place personally and professionally right now, because I'm doing what I always dreamed of doing. And I am running a business. It's growing, and we have another provider. So I feel like we're growing and doing all of that. And then I have a wonderful home life with my husband and children and my parents and my in-laws and my sister and everybody. So I don't feel like I'm missing anything right now. I feel very fulfilled and blessed, because I know that things can change. So yeah.
Yeah, and you've done a great job to kind of put all those things into place. And has there been, I guess, along the journey, anything that you really learned about yourself that you could share with kind of others, or some lessons that
I think, when I looked back on March of 2020 and I was like, oh God, how am I going to do this? I think that it's really scary if someone's going to start their own business, like the thought of all the 1,000 things that have to happen. But what I learned was that you do the first thing, and then the first thing leads to the next thing, and then the next thing leads to the next thing. So for me, it was calling the accountant and being like, okay, how do I start a company? And he's like, you do this, you fill out this form. And then after that, we fill out this form. And then you go to the bank and open up this account and all of those steps. Like when somebody says, oh, I want to start a business or whatever, it's like they get scared into the thick of it. Like, well, how am I going to get the space? You literally have to go from step one. And step one, there's no instruction guide for it, but it's like, you can definitely get paralyzed by what is ahead, instead of breaking it down into like, okay, the first thing you do, and then the first thing leads to the next thing, and then the next thing, right? And it all falls into place. So yeah.
It's kind of like what I say to some of my clients. First of all, the anticipatory anxiety is, a real thing. It can be very crippling for people, and that if you can break things down, like you said, one step at a time, and then understanding that you need to trust the process, and that at any given moment you need to be ready to pivot. And I like to also say that there really are no mistakes. It's just like a learning process. So if something didn't work, then, you change the direction a little bit and you keep moving forward. So I think that that's really important to kind of.
Yeah. And I always tell my team, like, if something doesn't go the way it's planned or whatever, and it's a mistake, I will often say, okay, like after it's happened, like, let's learn. What do we do? How can we change it for the next time? Because otherwise, what was the point of the mistake? Like, there's no value in it. So you really do have to reflect, and there's always lessons to be learned. So yeah, I definitely take that. There's when you make a mistake, it's not the end of things. It's just a learning moment if you can see it.
100%, and a teachable moment. And if you can't see it, that hopefully at some point that you we'll see it down the line.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's always a silver lining to things. You just have to look for it. And I say that all the time.
For sure. kind of as we are starting to near the end of our conversation, we could talk forever. We could share some of our, college moments of how we used to love to eat Peeps and let them, like stay open while while they got stale or something else. But in an effort to keep this helpful to the Next Chapter community and other moms out there trying to balance it, and reconnecting with their values, any other parting words that you want to share with the audience?
Parting words, like my wisdom. I have no wisdom.
Yes, you do. Come on.
I think just following your passion and knowing that you can do what you want to do, and like don't let anybody stop you, or those limiting beliefs like you just said, Andrea. Like it just takes one step and then the next step follows. And the hardest step is the first one, and it sounds so cliche, but like you really just need to start, and then everything else kind of follows in its place. Like, how do you get into college? You have to apply, you have to write your essay, you have to do these things, right? So just start with one little thing and then it'll lead to the next thing. So don't get scared by everything else that's going to come. Just do one thing at a time.
For sure.
No one else did it all at once.
Exactly. Rome, what is it? Rome wasn't built
overnight.
Exactly. And speaking about, Rome and Italy, Rhee and I actually had a chance to go through Florence together when Rhee was studying abroad in Italy. I was in Paris, and we had a chance to, spend some time there. It's crazy to believe that that's what we were doing 20 some years ago. And now here you are running this amazing practice, helping people here, and being able to stay connected with their family and friends. And so I appreciate you being part of another community of mine, the Next Chapter community. And I will be sure to link how to find Rhee and her practice in the show notes. And thank you for being a guest on my podcast.
And I'm just going to add a shameless plug. She is amazing. So definitely listen. Andrea is incredible what she does, and she also has reinvented herself. So kudos to Andrea. Mwah.
Thank you. We promised that we wouldn't make each other cry. So we're, now we can wipe our tears away. So thank you again for listening to the Next Chapter podcast.